I will tell you, I was down in Orange Beach. I was on the coast from Friday up until Monday evening, and LSU is everywhere. LSU is, I mean, it is everywhere. Now, I know that is a popular getaway for this part of the world, and that there is a lot of LSU graduates and alumni based there, but that is a place that I have frequented over the last 5 to 6 years, and it has not always been as strong. The presence has not always been as strong as I felt it over that last 3-day stretch through Memorial Day. I just thought that when I saw some of the videos of Orgeron going viral from the weekend, and then kind of taking in the environment around me in Orange Beach, I mean, it just, the LSU brand is as popular and as strong as seemingly it has ever been. And we will talk to the head coach about that, and specifically as we were talking about inside the headlines. He was here a week ago. He was here last Tuesday, and he went in depth. He and T-Bob went in depth on the offensive line, kind of breaking it down by position, going through the depth chart, what he expects some of the names to be, some of the players. We're going to do the same thing about wide receiver this morning coming up. And this is going to be a very popular and high-end group here in 2020 when you talk about Jamar Chase, who was the Biletnikoff winner last season, and Terrace Marshall, who was on pace to have a as dynamic of a season as Chase and Jefferson did if he didn't hurt his foot in the middle of the year. But those guys are both leaving after this season, so it's going to be a big turnover period. And for the success that they have had on the recruiting trail, the two top targets in the state of Louisiana are both at that position, excluding Mason Smith, the big defensive tackle down in the Bayou parishes that LSU's in a great position with. But when you talk about Brian Thomas at Walker High School and you talk about Chris Hilton at Zachary High School, they've got JoJo Earl committed from Texas, who's a game breaker. They love him, but they want to make sure and secure the border like Orgeron talked about. And these two guys are at the top of the list, and Thomas out of Walker High School and Hilton, who is out of Zachary, who I know you've seen Hilton up close.
Oh, we've seen both of them,
We saw both of them. We called that Walker game, and then I went to that state championship. But you saw Hilton break that game, that play that he's pretty much known for his sophomore season when he won the state championship on an 80-yard just kind of tunnel screen.
Yeah.
I mean, since
Fumbled
then,
snap.
He's turned into an All-American track athlete. He's turned into a game breaker, obviously, consistently on the football field that everybody in the country wants. So I look forward to hearing him break down the wide receiver, but I know that there's a big emphasis in recruiting that position during this cycle.
Yeah, and I think, although I don't know if they would address, I can't remember what Coach O said publicly or not about this, but as good as the wide receiver group is, and it is spectacular this year, and I really like Keyshawn Booty and Coy Moore, and I think that they do as well. But I still think that it does irk them a bit losing those other commits that they had on signing day, right? Yeah. Because that looked like, I mean, the best wide receiver class in the country at the time. Then it kind of fell apart a bit, or it lost a little juice. So trying to get those guys that you mentioned, obviously they're behind the priority list because as good as things are now, it's the demanding cycle of college football, right? You always got to restock. And so with that in mind, like that was one of the things that stood out from the offensive line perspective when we talked about it last week, is that although you have a lot of question marks, if you wanted to make yourself feel better about it, at least just the raw numbers are better. You're almost like 3 deep scholarship-wise. You might be 3 deep scholarship-wise, which is such a far cry from where you were when Orgeron took over. So, like, in theory, you've recruited well where you throw enough guys against the wall, somebody will rise, somebody will be able to get the job done. Well, I'm interested to check in on defensive line as well today, because when you want to talk about a group that looks wholly different than it did just a couple of years ago, they have been cleaning up on that defensive line, and they're incredibly deep. They got more great recruits coming in, and it's so I want to see where Coach O's head is at in that regard.
When we talk about LSU reestablishing their brand as a national power in football, to me, building that reputation back to a consistent brand is the defensive line spot. When LSU was dominant through that early 2000s run, they were pumping out defensive linemen kind of like they do defensive backs now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It was almost like every single year who was going to be that top first, second, third round draft pick from LSU that was going to be a difference maker from that spot. I think you're about to start to get into that rotation. Caleb Vaughn was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
You look at Tyler Shelvin, he potentially could be a first-round pick. I mean, you talk about the guys that now they're recruiting in Jacoby and Guillory out of Alexandria, Jaquelin Roy out of Baton Rouge. I mean, those are the guys that a couple of years ago they may have gotten 50% of those recruits. They may have lost out on both of them. But now everybody that's in the state, everybody that's that type of caliber player at that position, and you could even step outside of Louisiana and go get a guy like Apu Ika, who's going to be a difference maker this season.
And what a good get by Bill Bush there on signing day. You always in signing day, like our brains have a way of highlighting the negative and just kind of going on the positives. You always remember the flips that leave you. You got to remember the flips that came to you as well. So getting Apu Ika last second is obviously paid huge dividends. And as far as the emphasis on D-line and why that's so important, I mean, if you're just talking about football team building theory, it's really not hard to understand, right? Who gets paid in the NFL? Left tackles, quarterbacks, other linemen. I guess Mike Thomas kind of said the market. But what do all those positions have in common, right? It's that they help the quarterback. Great wide receiver helps the quarterback. Great left tackle protects the quarterback. Everything rolls through the quarterback. Better quarterback play. It's just a better chance you have of winning. Well, who gets paid in the defensive side of the ball? The D-line, right? The pass rushers, the guys who can most consistently affect the quarterback. So, if you're trying to build a badass football team, there's nothing better that you can do than just have a super badass D-line. It's like that Alabama team from, I don't know, was it 2015 or something when they had the 9 deep? It was like 3 guys they could go where there was no drop-off. I mean, that was just a war chest that you just couldn't compete with. And LSU is not there yet, but they are putting together quite the impressive defensive line group.